All right. Uh, Pessimistic and optimistic people. You always, I don't want to say judge people, but there's a way to look at people. I guess people always do it, and I hear it referred to it all the time. So if I was to ask you, what do you see here? You're going to say to yourself, if you're believing that you're being optimistic, that you're going to say it's half full. And if you think somebody says it's half empty, you are deeming them pessimistic. Now, there's two ways to look at it, they say. Now, to me, there's a third way, but we're going to talk about the first way. First way is if you're looking at it as trying to be optimistic. If you're only going to take the time to look at the good in something, are you actually taking the time to see something as it is, or just what you want to see and sugarcoat it, basically? Because if you're going to sugarcoat everything in your own life, that really is not real. So you got to be careful on that. Now, again, if you're going to look at everything in a pessimistic point of view, some people might, into their own thoughts, say that they're trying to be safe, and that's why they don't trust it and blah blah blah. So it's one of these issues that is, what do you see there doesn't maybe necessarily say the kind of human being you may want to be, but saying that this glass is half full, and if somebody says it's half empty, you automatically look at them as they're being pessimistic. You're the one actually being pessimistic. That's what the fact is. If you think that somebody looks at this and says it's half empty, is being pessimistic, you have been pessimistic already. Now here's the thing. The reality of it is that there's 50% juice, 50% nothing. That's the reality. Now, why not look at it realistically? And that's how a human should take the time to look at something. Now, if you're going to actually look at that and say, not take no sides, well, maybe you're going to want to know, well, what is this actually? What is it? We can say it's juice. We know it's something yellow, but what's in it? What does it break down to? What's all the things in it? Is it good for me? Is it bad for me? Those are the questions you should be asking, not deeming somebody by the way they looked at something. Don't worry about that other person. What's all this air made out of? These are the questions to ask. Those are realistic questions to ask. It's not to judge somebody by the way they've looked at something. Because maybe they're looking at a glass half empty because something bad just happened to somebody in their family, or maybe they just had something stolen from them, and they only have half of something left, or maybe a little less than something. So maybe their eyesight's not so well and they don't see as much, or they're seeing something different. There can be a lot of reasons why somebody said something, and for you to look like they've said something in a negative manner just because they're stating it. Maybe they've never heard the term, and they're not saying another language, but they've never heard the term glass half full, and they know the word empty, in half. So it could be reasons, multiple reasons I could go on why somebody would look at that. And to think, if you're sitting there taking the time, I'm sure there's nobody that thinks they have a pessimistic point of view when they're looking at something more or less in a negative way, or in their mind maybe a safety, not trusting so much. They don't see those people going over there and going, oh, they're being optimistic, they're a bunch of idiots, or they're bad for thinking that way. Some of them might, but I guarantee most of them just aren't worried about the other. But it's those optimistic people that say, oh, look at that pessimistic. There's so many of them I can point out that are pointing out the pessimistic people, and I find that very, very funny, because to me it's just they got to point directly at themselves if they're going to think somebody is being pessimistic themselves. They're choosing to look at what those people are doing, everything as a pessimistic point of view, because I'm sure that on every human being there's a lot of optimistic or good things that they do, or at least that they think they're doing. So their own point of view is essentially what's going to matter. And if you ever think somebody else at that time has an optimistic or a pessimistic point of view, immediately, if you've ever thought that, turn around and think about yourself if you are being pessimistic or optimistic, because you can't be being optimistic if you've thought somebody is being pessimistic or being, being very negative. Why not try to take the turn and make them maybe, not say act, but try to put them or perceive them or make them take on a more positive, rather than continue talking about a negative and trying to get somebody to change by pointing out their negatives. Pointing out a positive, the optimistic points, rather than if you're thinking they're pessimistic, don't even bother going, don't go there with that, because it's only going to brew more pessimism, if you will, out of them, and it can only brew it back out of you. So, I really want people to think when they use, when they're thinking about others. I don't want to say it's like judging a book by its cover, but when somebody says something and you take it offensively, if you will, you're choosing to have that. It's like I could use a word like poop, and a few people might get offended by that, but you could use the word fecal, and it would be more clean. Now, not so many people may know what I meant when I said that word, so it's the same word. But then you could say the word crap, and now you're going to offend a handful more people, yet it's still not a bad word. Now, I could upgrade and say even another word worse than that a lot of people would know, and probably a lot of people know that word. Far more people know that bad word that we associate, which I don't, I've heard it, and I'll use it in my everyday life, but here it's a PG, so I don't even want to use that. But everybody won't even use the letters, but people know what word I'm using. But I'm sure that there's more children, especially, and a lot of adults that know that bad word more than they know the word fecal. Now that's an amazing thing to think of. Now, if they know that, should I look at all those people that use that bad word in a pessimistic point of view, even if they're not using it in a bad term? You know what I mean? If it's just a term they're just using and they were brought up and they thought they don't see nothing bad. I had a teacher that used to use it in school, and he never thought it was bad. But it's what do I look at them as being bad because they're using what the majority of the world considers a vulgar word? So, but fecal even could be used in let's say in an inappropriate way, but could be used at an inappropriate time. If you say it's supper time, and maybe a lot of families would be offended if you just even brought up any of that kind of talk at the dinner table. But maybe some families might not, as many. But I'm just saying there's a point to where you can't look at it as if it's the only time they saw you and it's supper time, is it really an inappropriate, and they know they're not going to get to see you again, and they're having a problems down there, and they brought up this word, are you offended? Are you looking at them at the dinner table being pessimistic because it's maybe their only time? Well, it's that, try to take the optimistic point of view as on that why, more of why and on how, I guess to say. But if people did that a little more, I think it would help the world be less optimistic and less pessimistic, and a little more realistic. Reality is where we really need to look at. And I'm told all the time I don't see things the way they are, and I'm not being realistic, and I find that really funny when I see the difference. It's like as soon as I just make them repeat their own sentence that I'd be saying to them, it's like they can't put the shoe on they can point, but they can't see it back, and it's like, I've always found that, so it's rather I just stay away than get involved with it. But I know that making this video, it'd be a lot of people that aren't willing to take the time to watch it will understand it also, and I don't want to say it's going to modify their behavior, make them into this almighty person, but if it just helps them one time in life through one situation, great. Maybe it improved it just a hair, they didn't even know it did. So this is the kind of things that might sink in on somebody, especially young people. So I hope when you see this, you can just say there's 50% juice and 50% air in there, if you will, or nothing. It's not being pessimistic, and it's not being optimistic. It's being realistic. So again, I hope reality, the way I showed reality, helps.